and let's go. My name is Maria Ford, she, her pronouns. I am a WCC facilitator. I'm here in Ottawa today. And today I'll be facilitating a conversation about WCC workshops offered for older adults. So these community learning circles bring together facilitators, our partners, subject matter experts with the intent of deepening our understanding of the communities we serve. And today we'll be learning from each other about facilitating workshops in populations of older adults. And that may include in retirement communities, in drop-in centers, community health centers, public libraries. And I'm just going to share a couple of slides before we get into it. Can everyone see my screen all right? Great. So this is the agenda for today. I'll introduce the panelists. We'll spend about a half hour building some awareness and context around this particular community. And then we will get into some actionable tips and tricks and best practices for facilitators. It's probably always my favorite part. I always learn so much from other facilitators. And we will have time at the end for a Q&A session. So we'd ask that you save your questions for them, or you can put them in the chat at any time and Rika will keep track of those. And just while we've got some facilitators in the room, want to remind everyone about upcoming facilitator events. So on Wednesday, May 27th, it'll be the evening session. We'll have a facilitator meeting. And then on Wednesday, June 24th, at this time, you can mark your calendars for a topic to be determined, to be announced. We've also got our next Write Together coming up on Tuesday, June 16th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. And of course, we encourage you to invite everybody you know to that. And there's a URL down there where you can get all the information. All right, I'd like to introduce the panelists. So we have Jim Swafford with us today, he, him pronouns. Jim is a member of Living Long in the Distillery, the steering committee there, and that's in Toronto. And he was the lead on the LID Life Stories project, and that was a collaboration with WCC. So really looking forward to hearing from Jim today. We also have Bryan here, he, him. He is a WCC facilitator and a lead community health worker at East End Community Health Center. That's also in Toronto. Martin offers case management services to clients and to the community at the health center. And Martin initiated WCC workshops for seniors at the health center. Helen Kennedy and Angela Turner are both WCC facilitators at sites at Wood Green. So Helen is also a labor and community activist, and she's facilitating public workshops virtually on Friday afternoons. Maybe some of you have been in her workshop, as well as on site at Wood Green's St. Hilda's Seniors Community. And Angela has facilitated workshops at Wood Green as well as at the YWCA. And Angela discovered WCC as a writer at Wood Green. So this is our great panel today. We'll get to know more about them as we go. So to set some context, the demand for WCC workshops in older adult populations has been growing, and we've recently received a Government of Canada grant called the New Horizons Grant for Seniors, specifically to develop a strategy around our programming for older adults. And this is great news because we are seeing increasing demand for these programs from partner organizations as well. And we have representatives from 3 of those organizations on the panel, as you saw. And as I invite each one of them to start us off, I'll tell you a little bit about the organization they represent. So first up is Living Long in the Distillery, which I will call LID for short. LID is a subcommittee of a neighborhood association in Toronto. And communities like this are often known as NORCs, so N-O-R-C. And that stands for Naturally Occurring Retirement Community. And LID's focus is on an integrated approach to supporting individuals to live as long as possible in the community. Marika will post a link to Living Long in the Distillery in the chat, just for those of you who are interested. So Jim Swafford, as a member of Living Long in the Distillery Committee, I'm hoping you can kick us off with some general context around the experience of or in older adult communities like this one. Increasingly, people are choosing to age in place, and there's a lot of research and innovation around NORCs. It's increasing. What would you like the WCC community to know about communities like LID?
Sure. Thank you, Maria. Good to be with everybody today. I should say right at the start that we are a bit of a non-traditional NORC. We call ourselves a horizontal NORC, and that's because we're six separate apartment buildings that surround the 10-acre distillery district in Toronto. These were buildings that, of course, were not intended to be a retirement community, but over time, they became home to a good number of senior residents, and some of the buildings have a pretty high percentage of older adults. We love living in this vibrant, historic, picturesque neighborhood, and we want to live here as long as possible, obviously. One of the problems has been traditionally that the separate buildings have tended to separate us, that they silo us to some extent. They divide us up into sub-clumps of residents. And so LLID strives to make this a more interconnected community for older adults. And that goes along with uh, social, educational, health and wellness, and most recently, arts programming that we bring into the neighborhood itself. That's what we see as what NORCs are all about. And so that's our core mission, basically.
That's a fantastic overview, not just of your own community, Jim, but of, I think, what is probably maybe there's no such thing as a typical NORC, but
Maybe not, no.
because they're naturally occurring. But I
Yeah.
think that's a great example of how a retirement community could be naturally occurring. It's very interesting to me that in this community there's these six separate apartment building structures, and a group of people who've found community together between them. I wonder, just before I let you go, could you also speak to the role that a service like a structured writing workshop would play there?
Absolutely. And this was the writing workshops were quite we thought, a bold experiment for us. We were hoping to encourage both individual creativity and community building. And so, real quick, from October to March, we ran this program we called Life Stories, funded by a grant from Wood Green, by the way. So, thank you, Wood Green. And at its heart was the series of six every other week workshops that were facilitated by WCC. And the project succeeded beyond our wildest dreams, really, in terms of building, encouraging creativity and building community. And it was so successful that by toward the end of the grant period, we squeezed in a couple more WCC sessions for people who missed out the first time around. And now 20 of our residents are trying to continue that writing effort in two writing groups that WCC and Wood Green helped us launch. So these structured workshops have become a very important part of what we do and who we are now.
Hmm. Thank you. Thank you for connecting connection to the
Mhm.
writing workshops. Yeah. Great. What a great overview. I'd like to head over to Martin at the East End Community Health Center next. EECH provides primary care, health promotion, and disease prevention services in Toronto. And a unique aspect of their mandate is to reach out to people in the community who may have difficulty accessing health care. That could be due to factors such as language, culture, poverty, or the lack of health insurance. Marika will put a link to the community center in the chat. Martin, you're a community health worker there, but also a WCC facilitator. And I know that you were instrumental in bringing WCC workshops to specifically older adults who use the services at the health center. Could you tell us about your experience of the older adult population that you serve, their needs, why you felt that these workshops would be a great fit?
Yeah, so the older adults that we serve are quite diverse. We work with various ages from age 55 to 90 and above. Um, Various different races and cultures, socioeconomic statuses, many of which our older adults are low income seniors. Um, and so one of the most beautiful challenges that we have is that during the workshops, because of the range of diversity, a lot of discussions pop up, and so it has been a little bit of a challenge for me to center on the actual pieces itself, but it's actually really beautiful to see. Um, so I allow the discussion to a certain extent. One of the main common needs, I think, for our senior participants of this group, um, is social inclusion. Um, you know, and we know that being social decreases the likelihood of a lot of like negative health outcomes. And so I've also found obviously the financial need. So we support people, for example, if they have challenges with getting here, I will give them a TTC ticket. Um, and so we also have, an emergency food cupboard that we have here. So if at any point I connect with someone and I realize that they are lacking some food security, I will support them in accessing that food cupboard. But also, very importantly, the community members that do come to WCC, sometimes they do have needs that are not met. And so it's a really great opportunity for me to connect with those folks and offer them additional services, whether that be, a doctor or just case management. And so why I felt the need for WCC workshops is that I was actually running a New Horizons grant. We called it Seniors Together. And so um, during the process of connecting with my participants, I found that there was actually kind of like a need for legacy building and almost a fear um, of discussions around advanced care planning. And so originally, I really wanted to run a writing workshop that would kind of combine those two and having acceptable conversations about what that might look like. And so, that's how I connected with WCC. And so I find it really important to still have those conversations in a very open and accepting format
Hmm.
for prompts.
Thank you so much. Okay, so a couple of interesting things there that I heard. First, the importance of a low barrier program like a writing workshop to bring clients in, to bring them toward you so that you have an opportunity just to see where people are at without like an appointment or a clinical need. That's very interesting because I don't work on the front lines like you, so I hadn't considered that. That's really powerful.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
well,
and do you find that like there must be a range of programs like that, or is this one be like rare?
yeah. So a lot of our groups here at the center are physical health groups, but we do have a number of kind of art groups. So we've had gardening groups. I've run a photography group, like a photography walking group. We've run a number of kind of like arts-based kind of groups, and so this is our first writing group. Um, So I think it kind of just offers another way of people expressing themselves. And so Another great thing with the writing group is that it's very low barrier social prescribing because a lot of our doctors will tell their clients to join such a group. So it is very helpful for not only our clients, but obviously all our community members as well.
Hmm. Yeah, so you're able to really meet people where they are and
Mhm.
then check in on them, whether or not they, want to be checked in on you. You're at least aware of sort of, you're here. I observe, you might be observing things that you want to address with them later. That's very interesting. Yeah, the other thing I heard from you was that a writing workshop maybe um, different from a photography workshop or a painting workshop. A writing workshop felt to you like a way to sort of loosen up conversations around advanced care or maybe even end of life care or yeah. And are you
Mhm.
finding that that's true? Is it easier to have those conversations with the participants after the
We
workshops?
I try to have those conversations at least. So my format is I usually do like an 8 week kind of like group. So in each of the 8 weeks, I'll have that conversation at least once.
Okay.
And it has
Yeah.
been a fairly open dialogue. It helps people kind of like start thinking. In my prompts, so for example, the prompt that I had today was how would you like to be treated when you can't make your own healthcare decisions, where you have no capacity and you have no voice? And so when you think of that as a prompt, you put your sometimes, some of the participants put themselves in that perspective of,
Hmm.
maybe being in a bed and not being able to tell someone how they want to be treated. And so I think those conversations kind of open the door for very realistic approaches to their advanced care planning.
Hmm. Oh, thank you so much. This is so innovative and it gives me a deeper insight into the concept of a social prescription as well. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah, thank you.
Um, Jim, before I move on to Helen and Angela, I'm just wondering if anything that Martin has said makes you want to add anything to your experience at LLID.
Well, it makes me realize partly how I think we'll probably hear this several times, how different the groups can be. This issue of diversity that I was hearing Martin talking about, and that we've been thinking about. It didn't seem to us as we began our program that there was anything like that degree of diversity that Martin was talking about. This is, a fairly well-heeled neighborhood. People are very articulate. Most people are used to writing, although not necessarily this kind of writing. But there's a diversity that you get into if you just scratch the surface a little bit, and it's a diversity, of national origin, of experiences. Older people who have 60, 70, 80 plus years of experience have had very, very diverse lives in all kinds of ways. And what I guess I would just say that what we found in our very different circumstances here is that that kind of diversity is a great education for everybody who's in the group. That's one thing that just struck me as
Mm,
was talking there.
hmm. Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks for letting me put you on the spot there again. So the third organization that's represented on the panel today is the Wood Green Community Services, who we just heard, I think, Martin say also funded one of the programs at the East End Community Health Center. So all this commingling is so fascinating. So Wood Green is one of the largest service agencies in Toronto. Its mission is to enhance self-sufficiency, promote well-being, and reduce poverty through innovative solutions to critical needs. And that includes housing communities for older adults, as well as integrated care to improve physical, social, and mental well-being, avoid hospital stays, and promote independence and dignity. And again, Michael will pop the link to Wood Green in the chat for anyone who's interested in learning more after this session. Helen, I'll head over to you. You've facilitated 2 workshops a week regularly now for about 2 years, which is just amazing. Let's just take a moment to give a shout out to Helen, the super facilitator. So one of your workshops is for older adults at the St. Hilda's Wood Green residential community. And I wondered, maybe you could compare the facilitation experience between your weekly virtual workshops on Fridays and the weekly on-site workshops at St. Hilda's.
Yes, thanks. And it's great. It's been great thinking about this for the past week. There certainly is a big difference, although both experiences are terrific. The in-person, just by the fact that it is in person, is more intimate. There are 6 regulars in my in-person, and every once in a while, one or two others will drop by. But we've over 2 years, we've come to know each other pretty well. And it's not the same and the online. I mean, although we have regulars on the online, and I really appreciate some of them are here today, Manira and Karen, um, and maybe others. Oh, my co-facilitator's here, Roxana. That it is with the regulars, we also get to know their stories, but there's always new people every week. So there has to be a bit of a um, thinking around not being, oh, here's a clique and I'm just joining a clique. That's really important. Um, and also, I find that the prompts are very different for each group. The seniors, most of them want to write about their childhood. They want to leave something to their children and grandchildren that isn't the fine china that they got from their grandparents. Um, and so that it's something that sparks memories, I think, is more where I am with the in-person seniors group on Mondays.
Prompts
And
that spark memories. That's great.
yeah, so for
Yeah.
example, a week or so ago, I did a Shel Silverstein poem about ice cream, which basically just lists all the different flavors of ice cream. We had incredible writing. I learned so much. I learned about the biggest ice cream parlor in the world, which is in Kingston, Jamaica, Devon House, and what happens on a Sunday at Devon House in Kingston, Jamaica. In 2 other villages in Jamaica and Trinidad, there was an ice cream lady that came with a cart, and just the like just really beautiful scenes of ice cream. And then someone who was raised in a village in Kenya who didn't know what ice cream was until she came to Canada. So I mean, just and these are just things that everybody's learning also at the same time. So it's really really exciting. On such a simple and Shel Silverstein is a children's writer, right? I mean, but it was just absolutely perfect to do this. So food is also a really big one for the the seniors group, and if even if there isn't a prompt about food, we end up talking about food a lot. And we regularly have potlucks because that just rose as an idea out of doing this. And almost every workshop is like, when are we going to have a potluck? Um, so it's great. And Wood Green has been fantastic too. It's a little bit of a different kind of complex, I think. I mean, certainly for me, because they have 3 different buildings. One is more like a streets to homes building that has a lot of support and social workers, a lot of substance abuse issues, and a lot of police that come regularly, that kind of stuff. The one is just an older adult residence where they're independent living. The other one, I think, is more of an assisted living building that's just opened or just been renovated and opened this past year. We have representatives from all 3 buildings. We have actually 2 from each. We didn't design it that way. But it's along with diversity, everyone. I think we have 2 Jamaicans, 2 Philippines, and a Trinidadian and a Kenyan, and it's just incredibly rich diversity. But also there's a diversity of needs, and everybody, almost everybody, started by saying, "I can't write. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I wanted to support the program." And to tell the truth, they're just absolutely incredible writers. They just needed a place to be able to let go and write. And and I learned from, I used to be a recreation coordinator with the city of Toronto, and I had a seniors group in my community. And the one lesson I learned that I will never ever forget is that don't underestimate a senior because they have incredibly rich backgrounds. For one, this woman was writing, she grew up in Hawaii before she moved to the Philippines. And she was talking about as a child, she lived on a banana plantation or pineapple plantation, and you know the way she would play with the kids, and it sort of said, I thought, oh, was Barack Obama there when you were there? Oh yeah, Barack was one of our friends. We played with him. I would never have thought to ask that question if I hadn't learned that lesson that don't underestimate a senior. And there's been lots of other sort of revelations that people have had through their writing that have just been like phenomenal. And along with Martin, I mean, I wish we did have more social workers in the building, but not from the people that come, but from people they talk about in the building who actually need more support, right? That's sometimes sad. We've also been through my one of our participants actually died last year, very tragically, on the day we were having we had an open uh, session where they were reading their poems to the whole everyone in the buildings were brought in were invited. So it was really, really sad. But then we met and we talked, and the next prompt we had was about losing one of our residents. We've been through the one of them lost their partner, you know, supportive. Then one about losing your partner and lost loves, and you know, so it's you can really. I feel like I know more about what prompts are they would want for the in-person group. That's not to say I don't love doing prompts for the other, because I know the folks are there, but it's I think it's different level, and you have to have, I think, have much more variety. I think they would get pretty bored, my Friday noon group, just talking about cooking and childhood memories all the time.
Wow, Helen, you have painted such a rich picture of, I think, what not just the community that you facilitate in might be like, but what those workshops are like. I can smell them, I can see them. Thank you so much. I also love that you did an open mic event. That's
Mhm.
really cool. Yeah.
Mhm.
Wonderful, Angela. Now you first wrote in a WCC workshop at Wood Green's Broadview site, and then you became a facilitator. I'd love it if you'd share your experience. Like, how did your experience as a writer in those workshops then inspire you to want to bring them to others?
Um, well, I think just listening to what everyone said, uh, I think my experience was quite different from what people have been discussing, and I don't know if it was because of the facilitators. I think maybe it was partly because of that and the prompts that they chose, but I think for me the workshops, and I still feel that way when I've facilitated them, is a great opportunity for writing. I think the fiction part of it was very important because of that idea that everything we're writing is fiction. I don't feel like I ever really wrote about myself or my life. Um, it was just a very creative way to express myself. It gave opportunities for kind of dreaming or fantasies, that kind of thing. It wasn't about looking to the past or my life or anything like that. So I don't know why my experience was different, but that was the thing that I really enjoyed about the workshops, that it was a creative outlet that gave me experiences really to sort of learn about myself more, because as much as I loved listening to the others writing, which of course was very important, I also really enjoyed and found it very surprising listening to my writing, because I felt almost like it was the writing of a different person. And that's what the workshops gave me. And I felt it was very important because, yes, I do feel that seniors are concerned or thinking about what's going to happen to them in the future, what's happened to them in the past. But I feel that there are other ways in a way for seniors to be able to do that. But the workshops to me were just a very creative outlet that seniors don't often get the chance to participate in or to even think about. So that's really what made me feel that I would like to give that experience to others, because I felt like it was almost a different experience that, seniors don't always get the opportunity to have. And it's, like the others have explained, it's very low cost. I mean, you don't really need anything. You just need a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen and just your imagination. So that in itself is a good thing. And so I just felt it was a very creative and a very artistic outlet for me. It wasn't really about writing about my life. I took the fiction part of it very seriously, because most of the time I was just writing total fantasies and dreams and about other worlds that totally surprised me. And I think I have to give a lot of credit to the facilitators, because I think the prompts that they used, and the environment that they created gave rise to allow people to do that. And for me, it was a really very enriching experience that I don't get in many other activities to do with seniors.
Angela, I really hear the passion in your voice, the passion for creativity and self-expression, and especially to just like let the imagination go wherever it will go. You're just making me want to write right now. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we've got some really great insights already from all of you. There's a couple of questions I thought I would just throw out to all of you. You're welcome to, any one of you could answer them, or you can talk amongst yourselves. We've talked a lot, well, we've heard a lot about the great diversity among this population. I think we can say that for many WCC workshops. Like, I'm facilitating one right now at a public library. You never know who's going to walk in. I wonder if any of you has thoughts around if there's something specific we can do in a workshop to particularly platform and celebrate that diversity. Martin.
Yeah, one thing that I've done is I pair very serious topics with more fun ones, very similar to Angela, where it has, you can write about yourself, obviously, but a lot of them are very kind of fairy tale-esque. And so I've used like a number of different types of fairy tales from different cultures. So kind of Japanese fairy tales mixed with Germanic, mixed with, mythology in the South Americas. And so I kind of like to just switch that up. I think it really celebrates culture. These stories are so beautiful and wonderful. Or I'll even just have like a painting, and just displaying various artists around the world.
Those are great ideas. Thank you. And yeah, Helen?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely necessary, I think, to have diverse prompts from diversity also that reflects the group. In a lot of our food prompts, the food prompt will be about Filipino food, about Jamaican food. I had one that was actually written in patois, in Jamaican patois, and I had one of the participants read it who could do a genuine patois instead of me doing it, right? And that was like really fun. And because we do two every week, again, pairing them, a silly or lighter one with something a bit deeper is also really good. But in terms of also um, physical needs, we had somebody join us a couple weeks ago who is legally blind, and I realized that she wouldn't be able to write. And I thought, okay, like how am I going to accommodate this? Like, I mean, and I actually knew her from my union work. She just happens to also live in that building. And I said after everyone had read, I asked her if she had any memories or anything she wanted to say on that prompt, so that she could at least be part of that group. And then she afterwards she shared with me that she does have a computer that she could actually have it read back. And I thought, oh, perfect, right? It's broken right now, but she's going to get it fixed so she can more properly participate in the group. And there's a couple, of course, who are very soft, but I find the group itself sort of moderates them, says, now speak at a big voice because I want to hear what you have to say, which is awesome. And that I think, and also mobility issues. I mean, there's three of our participants who are in walkers, and just making sure you have enough at the table. And now that we know who the regulars are, there's only four chairs and three big spaces so that they can have their walkers there too. It's just, it's out, and if the door opens and nobody comes in, we know that's one of the people who's coming who has a really hard time and said these it doesn't stay open long enough for me to get in the door, right? So we ensure that there's someone there to help her. And I'm sure there's other, disabilities. I mean, we talked before about people that are hard of hearing who refuse to wear a hearing aid or don't have a hearing aid. That's a very difficult one too, especially in a community setting, not a library, where there are very limited resources to do. I guess, having some sort of microphone would probably help a lot. But anyway, but those are things you have to always be thinking about.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I do hope to. I'm going to circle back to that topic as well. I loved both you and Martin talking about different ways to make the prompts themselves diverse. Yes. Anything else, either Jim or Angela, that you feel like you want to add to that conversation about ways we can, as facilitators, we can encourage and celebrate the diversity of participants?
Yeah, I think the prompts are very important because, I mean, just recently I realized that probably some of the prompts that I'd chosen for a group just, didn't interest them or inspire them. So I think the prompts are very important, and sometimes images are better than words. But I think at the same time, those things are very difficult to choose.
Yeah,
Yes.
I guess I would say also, and this has happened in a WCC workshop that I was a writer in, not just images, but objects. Bring in an object, right, that's resonant in some way for you, and that can certainly invite a tremendous diversity of, response and writing as well.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And I was going to add, like, I've had people come who are illiterate, functionally illiterate. So for them just to have the bravery to come in and know that what they're going to actually write down it's that's such a big step for them to walk through the door. And I learned from them that it's really important to have a visual. Like I try to have a visual prompt and a written prompt at the same time, so that if people can't read, they don't have to stress over, the written word on the page and the image. If the image is somewhat linked to what the prompt says, then everyone's on the same page. But of course, people can write to whatever they want anyway. But I just wanted to add that in support of the idea of, not making ourselves diverse in how we present, because we have such unique populations that are attending. So.
I can't see who was speaking, but it sounds like Michelle. Am I right?
It's Michelle.
That was
Yeah.
me. Yeah, it's Michelle.
Okay,
Yeah.
hi. Yeah, just I'll introduce you to everyone. That's Michelle Wozni. She's a facilitator here in Ottawa too, at one of our partner organizations. Thanks, Michelle, for that.
Yeah.
Nancy, I see you have your hand raised.
Yep, just had to unmute myself. Yeah, I'm a facilitator here in Ottawa, and for about 3 years before I took the training with the Writers Collective of Canada, I was leading sort of legacy writing workshops or sessions through Hospice Care Ottawa. And so I'm very interested in this whole discussion, but also because I find that a lot of the people that come to the WCC sessions that I lead at my local library, because these sessions are on a Thursday afternoon, a lot of them are older, are retired, and many of them have expressed an interest in writing their memoirs. And one of the things that I find is that, like, 2 points I just want to make is that one of the things I do when I lead my sessions, and I don't use the WCC format in the hospice sessions at the moment, but I just want to park that thought for a second. But one of the things I always say in the workshops I lead at the library, which has a lot of senior citizens attending, is that, the real beauty of the WCC principles that we read out at the beginning of every meeting and the practices that we follow, it's really about creating a safe space to encourage people to write. But I find that there's the power of the community and the connection that people make. And so I say to them, I know in our principle we say we treat everything as fiction, even though you know that it's probably memoir. But one of the things I've found over the last couple of years is that anything can be a prompt that can really spark creativity, spark expression. And what I find happens in my hospice sessions more than anything, it's to spark conversation.
Mm.
And so, I have developed a whole range of activities. Somebody mentioned the ice cream one. Some of the best conversations we've had are about asking people to just share some memories around ice cream, or share memories about barbecues, or summer picnics. Or I do this seasonally, right? And so anything can become a prompt. And in the sessions that I've held at the library using the WCC method, I've brought in objects. I've asked people to bring in objects, and then they can't write about the object they brought, but they have to write about something else. So I think so one of the things I do say, is just to kind of go back to, anything is a prompt. Everybody can be a writer. And I think the real beauty of these sessions, especially for seniors, is that it's a place that they can come together and connect with other people, and gain some self-confidence in their writing. And so, I've developed resources. I'm happy to share them with others, in case they're useful. I'm hoping to maybe eventually put them into a workbook format. So I'm interested in finding out more about these grants, because I'd like to make these workbooks available to anybody. But I'm really encouraged by what I hear, because it's very much connected to my experience leading writing sessions. So I hope that's been helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. I think I may call on you a little bit later when there's another conversation I'm hoping to have. So I might call on you later. Thank you very much for letting us know that you've got some resources that you may be able to share with WCC. I think I'd like to ask one more question, just sort of a general question before we get into more details about facilitating, and that is for the panelists. Could you speak to how you've seen maybe one of the 6 essential practices function in the workshops? Maybe, how about if I start with Jim? Because Jim, I think you were both an organizer but also a writer, but you're not a facilitator. So I'd love to hear a non-facilitator's perspective on one or more of the 6 essential practices that we use.
Well, Well, I have to confess, between the WCC every other week sessions, I was facilitating kind of follow-up sessions. So I'm not saying I was a good facilitator, but I was a fumbly facilitator. So I've tried to play every side of the net on this one. Um, the One of the things that I have seen, and I'm going to speak from myself as a writer here, and that is the the timed writing that doesn't really give somebody occasion to plan out exactly what's going to be said, and then the to go back to Angela's point, to be able to think of this as fiction. I've found that these writing sessions have me discovering, I think Angela said this basically. I find I'm writing in a voice I didn't know I had. I didn't know that I intended even to use. And I think I thought afterwards, who said that? Where'd that come from? And sometimes it was kind of the mean side of myself, but good to know that it's there sometimes. And I can think of that as fictional too, right? Rather than real being the real me. But I've thought that idea that we're going to treat everything as fiction and that we're going to do this under time pressure, there was something really weirdly freeing about that for me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, the time constraint isn't an essential practice, but
right.
it's a byproduct of the workshop format, right? And that's really interesting to me. Um, because I've heard that expressed in a workshop before. Every now and then, sometimes a writer will say, "Wow, I can't believe what I was able to do in 10 minutes," or something like that. Um, but yeah, I like you raising that as part of the magic of what happens in a workshop. It definitely contributes. And I find too that like final 1 minute or 2 minute warning for myself anyway, I'm always very surprised at how something I was writing that I had no idea where it was going because I didn't even know I was going to write it, all of a sudden gets an incredibly good conclusion in absolutely no time. And I have no idea where the wrap up came from. And it was really the time pressure. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Martin, do you have one of the essential practices that you want to talk about in terms of your workshops at the health center?
Yeah, I'd say I'm encouraging people to write, even though they don't need to. Um,
Encouragement.
yeah, I think it's a big one because obviously reading or writing is it puts us in a vulnerable position, I think sometimes, just for fear of judgment or sharing our life experiences, if that may be the case. And I've had a number of participants who I think were a little hesitant based off of the context of what they were writing about, or the prompt maybe brought up some emotional kind of memories. But when they did share, and I do have to say, like, I feel like I don't even have to encourage. It's the other participants who are really like encouraging and doing that for
Yes.
each other, which I think is really beautiful. But um, when they do read it aloud, you really feel a sense of um like pride that they were able to overcome. Um and it just kind of offers more dialogue because people really validate the writer. So it's been beautiful.
Yeah, thanks. So that, yeah, the encouragement. I love that you picked that one. Thank you. Helen or Angela, is there an essential practice that you find yourself constantly returning to in your workshops with older adults? Helen, you're off mute.
Yeah, I mean, the one that there's, I think Martin also said, meant this, that is around the re, writing it as fiction, because mostly we're writing from our own experiences. And it's not such a, I mean, they still would want to pick up on, so what happened after that, or what else did you do, right? And I said, well, they may write about what's that experience next week, right? So just to, I mean, it's a fine line, like we can't just say, well, no, you can't ask that. So it has to be as gently, and it helps develop the intimacy of the group as well, right? Because they're sharing their experiences, and some of them are pretty exquisite, and some are pretty sad, and so there has to be some acknowledgement that thank you for sharing. That was very
Mm.
brave, even though we know it's a piece of fiction. I mean, it's there has to be some modifications at some point. But the problem some people have is just that they like to talk a lot, right? So that's more of a problem. Say, well, let's hear what someone else has to say, or just to do it as gently as possible. And I think I've been able to pass that message on so that those that do like to chat a lot have been, sort of modified a bit.
Mhm.
And also
Yeah.
those that don't want to talk so much are encouraged to talk more, right?
Yeah, and it is fun. I think when you have a group with people who do continue to come, I find as a facilitator, at some point I realized that some of the participants are helping me. They're helping me reinforce the six essential practices. And it just feels so beautiful to be supported like that by workshop participants. Angela, would you also like to weigh in on any of the six essential practices in your experience?
Yeah, I think probably the one that I considered the most important is the one about everything being fiction and to focus on the writing and not the writer.
Yeah.
Because as much as it can bring people together to share their stories and their experiences, I think that if that isn't the experience of some of the participants, it can almost exclude them, like saying, oh, share your experience of such and such. But if someone has never had that experience, it could almost make them feel like, oh, well, they don't really belong to the group. So I think that it's important that to keep going back to the fact that we're focused on the writing and the fact that it's fiction, even though, many times we know that it isn't. But I still think that that's very important.
Yeah, Angela, that's the first time I think I've thought of the practice of the assumption of fiction as being an inclusionary practice. So I really appreciate that insight from you. Thank you. We have like 3 minutes left. This was just amazing. I thank our panelists so much. Um, and all of you for contributing, but especially so Jim, Martin, who had to leave, Helen, and Angela. Thank you for taking the time not only to be here today and share, but the time it takes to prepare with me to do these CLCs. And of course, a big thanks to WCC for hosting them, Marika for doing all the organizing, and Ratma for making sure that everything runs beautifully with the technology and the chat and spotlighting the speakers and so on. Thanks, everybody. It's always inspiring to be in a room full of WCC facilitators.